Alright, this video is taking me way too long to make, mostly because I've still been trying to figure out how I was going to do these videos. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do them scripted, professionally style, or if I wanted to try something a little more casual. It took me a while to figure out what they're going to be, and I still am not 100% sure how these are going to, what format these are going to follow in the long stream of things, but it's time that I get this one out anyway, so I thought I'd go ahead and work on it. Today's lab video is going to be discussing lockpicking, various kinds of locks, the difficulty behind different types of locks, why they're so difficult, various forms of beating locks that I've got over here in my lab. First, we're going to do a quick overview of what lockpicking is. Locks, an average tumbler lock will look something like this on the inside. And I actually have a demonstration here. This is an average tumbler lock. Now, I was thinking about doing a demonstration of how to pick the lock, but it wouldn't be as high quality as some other videos you could find on YouTube, just because I don't have a good setup for recording that. Typically, if you wanted to record that, you would need like a vise and a stand to hold your phone and all kinds of various things. I have none of that at the moment. So if you want a demonstration on how to pick a lock, that's probably your best bet, is to go online to YouTube for the demonstration. But the basic mechanics are that these springs up here push the pins into the tumbler. And inside the tumbler will look something like this, where the pins are pushed into the tumbler wheel. While they're all pushed down, see, all the pins are broken into two parts. While they're pushed down, the pins will prevent the lock from turning, but when a key is inserted, it pushes the locks, or the pins, up into a position where the lock can move freely, allowing it to turn. So with a lockpick, you would do the same thing, but with but one pin at a time instead of the whole tumbler, which would require that you keep tension on the pins to keep them from falling back into place. And that would be how a basic tumbler lock works. There are, of course, other versions of locks that are more difficult to beat. This kind doesn't use a tumbler lock, but they're not incredibly difficult to beat either. I know I have another lock up here that is considerably more difficult than a regular tumbler lock. And that is this fella. This is more of an industry style lock. They use these for, you'll most commonly see these on professional buildings or on storage containers. These have several fail-safes in them that prevent them from, one, from being picked, and two, from being destroyed. This part here, for example, wouldn't allow for slip style lockpicks or for bolt cutters. And then these holes in here also allow deceptive tracks. And these deceptive tracks on the inside are so effective because what it does is it makes the tumbler feel longer than it actually is. This tumbler is actually only a 3 or 4 pin lock compared to a 5 or 6 pin. But it feels a lot longer and deeper than it actually is, because if you're just probing the lock, your lockpick is going to slide all the way through and will allow the lock pins to reset. So every time you probe the lock, you're going to reset the lock and you're going to lose all your progress. So you have to get past that, you have to mentally take note of how many pins there actually are inside this thing and where they all are, which is a lot harder than picking an average master lock style. My first time with a lockpick, I got this in 30 minutes, compared to one of these, which takes a few seconds. This requires a lot more finesse and a lot more skill, but I got it in my first try with a considerable amount of time. 30 minutes, that's a long time to be working on a lock. So, there are a few obvious ways to get around lock picking. A couple of methods include copying the key. If you've ever had access to the key, what you could do is sketch the exact shape down on a piece of paper and then cut it out of an aluminum tin or something like that, and you could have a exact replica of the key. Now, copying a key has a few benefits. It requires more time on your hands than actually having a copy of the key to work with, but it allows you to come and go as you please through the same lock without having to pick it multiple times. So that would be a benefit of copying a key. There's a few other methods. This is what I was referring to a second ago, where this lock would be immune to. This style of lockpick allows you to thread this into the tumblers, not the tumblers, but the actual pin that holds the bar in place, and force it to release so that the spring pops out and doesn't have anything to catch on. This basically shields the tooth that allows it to catch in the lock bar. Very effective for simple master locks, faster than picking a lock probably. Downside of these is that they wear out over time and can break or bend. You can easily make these out of aluminum cans, but there's a very finite amount of times you can use one of these. Option number 2, or actually option number 3, is to buy a professional lockpick set. This will allow you the means to pick almost any lock. Car locks being one of the most difficult. Hypothetically, you could still pick the lock to a car, but it's incredibly difficult. I've never even attempted it. Now, the final option would be to create your own set of lockpicks. I keep paper clips in my wallet just for this eventuality that I might have to create my own set of lockpicks. Now, there's a right and a wrong type of paper clip that you want to use when making your own lockpicks. You don't want to go with one like this. It'll focus up. This paper clip, hold on, has these ribs in them. If you can see those. Those are tension points, which means when you start putting this in the lock, these will snap off. And then you'll have a little piece of paper clip in your lockpick, or in your lock, and you won't be able to actually ever finish picking the lock. The reason they make these kind is just because they're extremely cheap. Way cheaper than making the regular kind of paperclip. Now, the regular kind of paperclip, whether you use the small or the larger one, yeah, it won't matter which one you use, the small or the larger one. Whatever's available, you can use both. But they won't have those ribs in the paperclip, which will allow it to be a little bit stronger when it's inserted into the lock. And then from there, it's simply a matter of bending it to shape. With a basic pair of pliers or your own hands or some manner of tension, you can easily shape these into the shape you need. You basically just need a straight piece of wire with a hook at the end, and then a straight piece of wire with more of a zigzag line, similar to this, at the end of it. And then there's one more key piece that you'll need for this whole thing. Without a tension wrench, this whole thing won't work. So to create a tension wrench, you need to straighten one out as much as you can, and then crimp it in the middle. Once you've crimped it in the middle, you need to make it as tight as you can so it's small enough to fit into the lock. And then you put a small hook in it, like so, and this will be your tension wrench. Without a tension wrench, picking a lock is impossible. No matter how many times you've seen on TV someone pick a lock with only one little paper clip or whatever, you need 2 pieces. So a complete lock picking set could look something like this. You can make it in a matter of minutes. And this will get you into most master lock style locks. Anything with the bar bolt like that. This will get you into something like that. Or given enough time, it will get you into something like this. I haven't tried a bump key yet. I haven't had a chance to get my hands on one of those. I'm not sure. From what I hear, they work great, but I haven't had a chance to get one of those. So I can't really demonstrate one of those on this video for you. I would definitely suggest, if you're going to be needing lockpicking skills, a lockpicking trainer kit like I got is the way to go. And then practice on this little lock with these lockpicks so that you are at least adept at being able to make lockpicks in a pinch. You can use the same design here if you use a bobby pin. Then there's handcuff locks, which are actually way less advanced. All of those is a little, this part here, this little spring lock that locks onto the bar clasp. That's basically all a handcuff lock is. If you have any small piece of metal, wire, don't ask how I know this, but if you have a bra, you can take the metal support in a bra and you can use it. Handcuffs are really not that difficult to get out of. Neither are zip ties, duct tape. Zip ties use a similar function. You can easily bypass the lock in a zip tie that same way, or with enough force you can just simply break the lock in a zip tie. But those are the basic ways to get around, beat average locking devices.